that are fairly large, but would be like sort of just a smaller vessel in a fleet.
So it's just that there's 3 big ones, but there are other craft as well that were found.
Exactly.
I want to get into the connection to biblical scripture because one of the scriptures that's from the same time as the book of Genesis, the book of Enoch, was removed from the Bible, but it's referred to by Jesus. It's referred to by a variety of people from that era as a very highly revered text. And it describes 200 fallen angels crashing to earth, being giants, and then becoming cannibals who are actually hostile to Earth's population and were ultimately judged that they had to be wiped out in a big flood. It sounds like we're talking about the same thing here. So what's the connection with the book of Enoch?
It is, and the information that I received was that these pre-Adamites had come down they were in the grand experiment. They shouldn't have been down here living openly amongst us, 1, and 2, they were now, the 22 other genetic experiments that these genetic farmer races were conducting down here. This pre-Adamite group started co-opting it and interfering with it, so they had to be dealt with.
And just in case somebody's jumped in and they didn't see those episodes, you described that when the protective grid went down 500,000 years ago after the planet blew up and became the asteroid belt, that we then have right away these so-called genetic farmer ET races that are then able to get in immediately and begin taking DNA from all over the galaxy and tinkering with Earth DNA.
Yes, and as we have been exploring more and more of the ruins down there, we've run across rooms that were a series of corridors that were sort of arranged the same way you would see a circuit board. And they were made out of a gold copper alloy that had weird kind of circular carvings in them that they said were not for people to walk through. It was obviously for channeling large amounts of electricity. Not far from there, they found the genetic labs where they found all these different types of beings in different stages of being developed. And I did confirm that it was partially technological and partially biological how they did these genetic experiments. They would create a zygote or whatever and then implant it in a human or another animal, have it grow, and then that's how they incubated them. They didn't have all of their technology. They were in survival mode from the moment they crash landed. They had to cannibalize all of their technology from the inside of these craft, these big motherships. There's huge areas where stuff's just been ripped out.
If they're trapped on Earth because they've crash landed, but then you say that there are craft that were found inside that can be flown around, doesn't that mean they could have left Earth and gone anywhere else they wanted?
Well, yes, they could in the craft, but everything that all of what they had left of their society was now down here on Earth. And these craft are not long-haul vessels. The little craft that they have are for, scooting around the solar system. They were stuck here in the solar system, and we have the 22 different genetic farmer races. We have the reptilians, and it's a hostile place for them to try to fly around. Their numbers were small. They were not in a good tactical position.
So they could theoretically visit moons of Jupiter, moons of Saturn, places like this, but they didn't have enough duration of fuel, let's say, or whatever travel capability to actually leave our solar system.
Correct.
By that point.
Right. And it was pretty hostile out in space during that time. They didn't want to risk an asset by flying it, to Jupiter or whatever. They could lose that asset, and they had very few assets left. But this civilization controlled the entire planet. What little resources they had, they were able to control the planet. After this last cataclysm occurred, none of the pre-Adamite survivors had access to their technology. So we mentioned the group that was in Asia, pre-Adamite group. Then there was another one in South America, Central America. They could no longer visit or communicate with each other. They were separated.
After the conventional Atlantean catastrophe we're usually thinking of.
Right, and they had always had some sort of a competition between these two bloodline groups, even before the cataclysm. This whole bloodline of these cabal or Illuminati type people, they trace their bloodlines through these pre-Adamites.
So in the book of Enoch, they're describing this group as the fallen angels. So you're saying these pre-Adamites with the elongated skulls, that is the fallen angel storyline.
It is the fallen angel storyline, yes.
But we do have this cabal, and this is one of the things that our insider Bruce has been saying, whether or not you believe this or not, the only thing that matters is that they do.
Exactly. Their religion is their religion is everything. It's behind everything they do.
Where do we see this pre-Adamite culture developing? Where did they hide out in the Americas after this catastrophe?
In South and Central America is where they had set up most of their enclaves, and they had been set up around other pre-Adamite structures that were now destroyed because of the cataclysm. There were huge earthquakes that basically liquefied the ground, and a lot of the buildings, massive buildings they had, just fell apart and sunk into the ground. They were running the hemisphere. They were mixing their genetics with some of the indigenous people of South and Central America. That's why we have, elongated skull beings that have a different colored skin, a different genetic mix. They were mixing their genetics with whatever group they happened to be around after the cataclysm. And going back to the Illuminati religion being based on a lot of this, what this group did, the pre-Adamites, you can now see why all of these interesting people have been making trips down to Antarctica recently, including Kerry on Election Day.
Right.
And even some of the royals have gone down there.
And now I'm speaking about the idea of some very interesting cargo that was found in those motherships. So could you describe what this precious cargo was that they still had on those ships?
Well, they had a number of beings that were in stasis. The information I received was that the surviving pre-Adamites, the bloodline that originally came from another planet, had put themselves in stasis before this cataclysm occurred, about 12,800 years ago. They have not awoken them yet. They're trying to decide what they're going to do. Now, another interesting note, we do have these archaeologists and employees of various universities that are down there excavating and documenting all of this. But what they have done, they being the cabal, I guess you'll say, they have used these large electromagnetic submarines that I discussed earlier to take a lot of archaeological items that they had found in other digs that they were keeping suppressed from humanity. They had them in huge warehouses. They were taking some of these artifacts down to Antarctica and seeding them in this one large dig that these archaeologists are going to make public. They are also removing any body that does not look human. And a lot of the human bodies, they don't look like they were slaves. They have tunics that have gold thread weaved in the tunics. They look royal. So they're planning on giving us a sanitized disclosure, and then over time, they will disclose the military-industrial complex secret space program. And after they do that, they'll say, oh, by the way, yeah, we've got this fairly advanced secret space program, and while we've been out to other planets, we have found very similar ruins as we have found in Antarctica. So they're going to try to trickle the information down over decades, and not immediately tell us about the ships they found and the high technology and non-humans.
You're not talking about necessarily something that you pick it up and it projects a holographic...
Out-of-place archaeology.
Okay.
They hide certain artifacts to keep the narrative alive of, the Earth. We only have 6,000 years of civilization, therefore.
And you say that they're actually finding those genetic remains down there now.
Right, and a lot of the like us humans, that they found under the ice, and this was they had obviously been hit by a huge wave that then somehow flash froze. And
an ocean wave.
an ocean wave, yes. And all of the bodies were referred, they jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, referred to it as the Pompeii on ice because of the way all of the bodies were found, some of them huddled together. It was very similar.
Could you describe for us what you have personally seen? Obviously, you're getting no-question briefings, but what have you personally seen of what you're talking about?
I was taken by the Anshar in one of their egg-shaped craft down to Antarctica, and Gonzalez was with us. When we were taken down there, Gonzalez had this like a rucksack, that looked like it was military, human military.
Okay.
And when we went down there, he was taking out this like a core sample thing that had a handle on it and a little camera on the end with these long needles looking things that twisted on, and he was walking up to each of these bodies, taking either a picture or a video, I don't know, and then sticking the core, the needle in the body, twisting it, pulling it out, and then dropping off the core sample in these little plastic test tubes, and then putting them in the bag as he was
And when you
going.
say these bodies, you mean like pre-Adamite giants?
Pre-Adamite bodies, there were these hybrids I personally saw in a fetal position, a very short human that had a tail. You could see the folds of the skin going down on the back, and then the tail kind of twisted out and was frozen. So he was taking genetic samples. And in the meantime, just before this, the Inner Earth groups they took us through a wall that hadn't been excavated yet. You could see just a piece of stone sticking up out of the ice and snow. And it wasn't far at all. There was an excavation going on. There were tall lights on tripods pointed down into pits, and they were excavating. Mm-hmm. They walked us right through the snow and the wall, and this room lit up. And the room was full of scrolls, books. I mean, it was obviously a library. The two Inner Earth beings walked up to one particular area, like they knew exactly where they were going, opened up this collapsible box, basically, and then started grabbing these metallic scrolls and putting them in the box. They were taking them. And these metallic scrolls were like laser etched with symbols. The stone was...
Are you saying that the scroll was metallic, or that it was a metallic container for a paper type
They
of
were
scroll?
sheets of metal rolled up.
Oh, sheets of metal rolled up.
And it crinkled as they were picking it up. Sounded similar to tin.
Huh.
And on them, you could see they were like laser etched symbols. And they were removing those before they were located by the people doing the excavation. I still don't know what was on the scrolls or the significance of them, but when we left, they took them with them onto the craft.
Thank you, Corey. And I want to thank you out there for watching us, supporting us here at Gaia, and making sure that we are on a path towards full disclosure.